Does anyone have any questions?
So many questions.
Can we hear
When you say prep the clay, what do you mean by that? Prep the clay.
So, prep the clay. If I have 200 mugs to make, or 50 bowls, or 10 plates, whatever number, Ryan will come in and he weighs out all the clay. I give him a list of 200 pieces at 1 pound or 50 pieces at 2 pounds, and then he just goes down the list, makes all the clay. He'll just wedge it all, bag it all up, and then that way when I go into the studio the next day, I just go right into throwing. I don't use air conditioner or heat or anything. Everything is dried naturally. So I open the windows to the studio. If it's humid outside, it takes longer. If it's super hot outside, triple degree heat, it's going to dry within a day. And it's always been a part of my process because I like that it's natural. If you try to control it too much, it can cause warps or cracks or anything like that. But it really just depends for me on the weather. But the average time is 2.5 weeks.
Well, and that also changed too when we moved here.
It
because
did.
it's different than when we were in East Texas.
Oh, it's very different.
It takes a lot longer.
Would you glaze them? Would you go through?
I only do one fire, so I let my pieces sit on the shelf until they're bone dry. I glaze them then, and then they go into the kiln for their glaze fire. I took that process out a long time ago, when I started my business, because I was starting my own studio. It needed to be efficient. I didn't need to do 2 fires. The only reason why you would do a bisque fire is to be able to handle the piece whenever you're glazing it. But if you're just really careful with it, then you can just glaze it and it can go right into the... But the difference between here and back in East Texas is there's a lot more water in the air. So now I have to do a water smoke to make sure all the pieces... I've never lost pieces in the kiln until I moved here. And I've finally realized, it's so much more humid here. Duh, Erica. You got to get the water out of it.
And losing pieces isn't just losing a piece. It's an explosion in the kiln, and one piece breaks off
And
onto
hits
a
this
bunch of
piece,
other
and then it lands
pieces.
on the pieces below it, or hits the top of the kiln shell or kiln roof, and then it messes up the kiln. So it's yeah.
Yeah.
But water smoke now. So now the process is I make the piece. It sits on the shelf for 1 to 2 days until it gets to a leather hard consistency. That's when I trim it and attach handles if there's handles that need to be attached. If I need to do any carving or stamping, for coffee shops, that's when I would stamp or carve for that during that process. And then after that, they go back onto the shelf and they dry until they're bone dry. There's no water in, well, here there's water in them. And then from there is the glazing process, which I always underestimate. I always underestimate the glazing process. I'm oh yeah, I'll have this done in a few hours. And then start at 6 o'clock in the morning and it's midnight and I'm still glazing.
It's definitely, we've learned I think it's more enjoyable to get to break it up into days because glazing is a whole thing. Shipping is a whole thing. So taking those into days.
Yeah, when you can break the processes up, it gives you a better flow in your studio. It's just a lot more functional to break it up that way.
I have a fun question.
What you got?
So you have, let's see, when we first met, you were in the biggest studio that you had been in. I mean, that was 1,000 square foot. Mm-hmm. And then your next studio is kind of the same.
It's about 600 square foot, yeah.
And then this last one was 200 square foot. What are your feelings on, how do you feel, what... Is it easier to have a big space or a small space or?
It depends on what you want to do. If you want, over the years, I have lessened the amount of pieces that I want to make. And so I didn't really need that big of a space anymore. I didn't need 600 square foot studio where I have stacks of shelves and pieces full everywhere. And then not only that, all the shelves in the studio are full, but also all the shelves in the kiln room are full. Because if I'm moving pieces, there's a process that I like to do is when I'm ready for them to be dry, after I've trimmed them, I put them in the kiln room. The kiln fires, it dries the pieces. Then I go into the next round of glazing. It really just depends on how big do you want your business to be? Like how many pieces do you want to make every month? Like I got to the point where I wanted to do a lot less. And so now I'm super picky about what I do, or like about the pieces that I make and how many I'm making. I don't say yes to everything now. So I don't need all the shelf space. I don't have to have all of that. It also makes you way more efficient. And you realize that I don't need 10 forks that do the same thing. Like,
Yeah.
let's get rid of some of those.
Yeah. Well, and that's one thing that you and I think have learned recently, like with our ADHD brains, sometimes having a space that is less is actually